Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome to Radical Personal Finance. My name is Joshua Sheets. Many years ago, right after college, I spent some time working for a marketing consulting company. And I had an experience there that related to one of my favorite topics. I don't remember who the customer was or who the plan was, but we were creating some kind of marketing plan. And it seemed appropriate to me to offer a suggestion that we create an ad involving camping. And for me, camping has always been something that I really enjoyed. I'll tell you why in a moment, but it's some of my favorite parts of my life as a child have been when I've gone camping. And so I opened my mouth and I suggested something camping related. And one of the senior marketing consultants, she did it very kindly, I'm sure, but basically she just jumped on me and she said, "Joshua, don't ever let me hear you suggest anything relating to camping ever again." She said, "Camping is basically the ultimate black hole in the marketing space. Like, it just doesn't work. Nobody wants to do it. It sounds nice, but don't ever suggest anything related to camping. Don't ever use camping imagery. Don't come at me with camping," basically. Well, today I'm going to break that rule, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that you and your family should consistently go camping, whether you like to do it or not. Now, a little bit of background on my story. Just this last week, I took my family camping. And I took my family camping because, for me, it has all the benefits that I'm going to share with you, but it's also an important part of my family culture. Growing up, my father had 7 children and he didn't have very much money, but somehow they traveled a good bit. And so at some point in time when he had a bunch of young children, he was thinking, what can I do? So he went out and found some cheap old junky $500 pop-up camper. And we dragged that thing back and forth across the United States multiple times. And a lot of my memories, my impressions of childhood relate to those experiences. I can describe specific scenes. I can describe specific experiences, all kinds of things related to that. And I found that it was just such a useful and impressive part of my life that I have always had a soft spot, an affinity in my heart for camping. But it's more than that. As the years have gone by, I have become convinced that camping is important for many, many reasons, both practical and psychological, because it is better than most other forms of practice. So, for example, I have believed for a long time that camping is much better than going to a resort or staying at a hotel. Why? Well, one of the reasons is that camping involves a whole lot of time together and a whole lot of skill building, whereas in hotels, you don't have that. Now, when I was younger, I hadn't stayed in a lot of hotels and hadn't stayed in a lot of hotels with children, but up until my camping trip this last week, I had not gone camping in probably almost a decade. Rather, I'd stayed in hotels. And along the way, I have proven again and again and again and again that resorts and hotels are inferior to camping. And let me explain why. So the first reason I believe that you should consider camping yourself and also camping with your family is that camping reintroduces necessary levels of adversity, desirable levels of difficulty into your life. When I go to a resort, I enjoy it. And there's generally no adversity associated with it. Now, there may have been some adversity in travel, but you go to a resort, you walk into your hotel room, you unpack your bag, and you put on your shorts and you wander down to the pool. And then you go from the pool to the dinner and people bring you your food. And you just basically sit around like a fat cow, consuming. And there's no adversity. But human beings are built for adversity. We are built for facing discomfort. Most of modern life is engineered to eliminate all forms of adversity. We live in climate-controlled houses. When it's hot, we're not. When it's cold, we're not. When we're hungry, we wander over to a little box sitting in our kitchen and we grab some instant food. When we're bored, we fire up instant entertainment, get a quick dopamine rush. Physical exertion? Nah, you can wander slowly around your house. Inconvenience, uncertainty? No, we don't face any of that in modern life. But we need to face those things because just like our muscles atrophy when we don't lift heavy things, our mental muscles, our skills atrophy when we don't do difficult things. We don't develop courage if we don't face risk. We don't develop the skills of resilience if we don't face hardship. Right? Our competence, our abilities weaken, they atrophy if we don't face responsibility. And camping, by simply moving us closer to the elements, creates a broad set of small micro-adversities. We face some mosquitoes and have to figure out where the bug repellent is and be uncomfortable. Maybe it rains or drizzles or dews, and all of a sudden you're a little wet, a little uncomfortable, a little extra cold. Your sleep maybe a little bit less comfortable. Instead of just a rock-solid 9 hours of uninterrupted snoozing, you wake up a few times during the night. You face cold mornings. You carry heavy objects. You have to figure out, firewood and rocks. You have to figure out, what do I do when all of a sudden I ran out of gas and I still have to cook the food? And you have to figure out how to cook over the fire. And so you get dirty, you get smelly, you face the environment around. These kinds of difficult things are desirable levels of adversity. Whenever I go camping, I tell myself and I tell my children just straight out that one of the goals of the camping trip is to make you appreciate your home. Right? You appreciate your bed when you come back after spending 3 or 4 nights in a tent and you come back to your nice, comfortable bed. You appreciate your bed in a way that you would not have appreciated it had you not gone without. And this is important for both adults and for children. Children who never experience discomfort become fragile. On the other hand, children who regularly experience appropriate levels of discomfort develop the skills and the techniques and the tools for dealing with that. They become resilient. Resilience has to be built over time. So my first argument is that camping introduces into your life and into your children's life a desirable level of adversity. Now, note, of course, that it is not all difficult, but I'm trying to get right at the heart of why people don't do it. And I'm trying to get at the heart of the laziness that consumes us as individuals and as cultures, where we just are desperate to escape adversity. And I'm telling you, that's the wrong path. Adversity is good. Facing it is good. It's appropriate. Now, on the flip side of adversity, we get to experience all the beautiful aspects of camping, right? Sitting out by the campfire, looking up at the stars. You and your children will see stars you don't normally see. You'll hear the wind rushing through the trees. You'll hear the brook babbling in the distance. You'll hear the calls of the animals all around. You'll be experienced in the morning sunrise with just a sensation of absolute beauty. You'll sit on a rock overlooking the sunset, appreciating the simple pleasures of life. And that, in and of itself, is reason enough to do it. My next argument is that camping is a tool that helps you to make children and people useful again. Remember, going to a hotel or a resort for a family vacation might be a fine thing to do. It's fun. It's great. It's a great move for certain trips. But when you go to a hotel, children and people are pure consumers. They are pure load. It's all an expense. Ask me how I know, right? I have to get multiple hotel rooms. We go to the resort and eat at the resort. I have to get 8 meals. It just adds up quickly. And in that life, in that world, children are a pure expense. But in camping, we make children useful again and we turn children into contributors. Instead of our normal life where everything just happens for us and we pay for it, and in this world where everything is outsourced and automated and delivered and purchased, where children have very little real work available, camping creates opportunities for meaningful work. Just like all of our forebears were able to put their children to work on the farm or on the homestead, we can use camping as a way to put children to work. Firewood needs to be gathered. Go out in the woods, find dead sticks. You can send 6 children off in 6 different directions, and they are actually doing something that's genuinely useful. Carrying things, setting up tents, cooking, washing dishes, organizing, getting water, taking care of and minding the younger toddlers so that they don't wander away. This is actually productive and useful and meaningful work that causes children to feel significant because they are. Children want to bear responsibility. They want to be competent. They want to be useful. They want to participate in meaningful, productive adult activity. And camping is a way of giving that to them naturally. One of the things that's been a little embarrassing to me as a father is because we've just spent so much time traveling and staying in hotels and resorts and whatnot, I haven't had a chance to teach my children some of the useful skills that they need. I remember a couple of years ago, I was watching one of my children. We were swinging a sledgehammer. We were just doing exercise, right? Beating a tire with a sledgehammer. And I watched one of my older children swing the sledgehammer, and I was just flat out embarrassed at how utterly incompetent this child was at swinging a sledgehammer. And then I realized, well, Joshua, that's your fault. How many opportunities have you given him to swing a sledgehammer? And the same thing comes in with swinging an axe. And so we went camping this last week, and I bought an axe, and we were out there and we found wood and we were splitting wood. And several of my boys were just thrilled to the moon at this new skill that they had acquired of splitting logs, splitting wood. And I could just see, like, they experienced more joy when we talked about the things that they had enjoyed. We went to Yosemite National Park. When we talked about things that they had enjoyed as a result of the camping trip, they didn't talk about the beauty. They didn't talk about the pretty things or they didn't talk about any of the things that I liked the most. They said, man, it was so fun to be able to split firewood, because it's just not kind of a normal part of my life. But it is my responsibility as a father to create a useful boy, a useful young man who can do things that involve splitting firewood. And yet in my own life, I'm so busy all the time, I don't have time to participate in those things properly. Right? It's either I sit down and make a podcast or sit down and do something on the computer. I don't want to go out and arbitrarily, find a pile of firewood and arbitrarily go out and be the safety monitor to teach how to swing an axe safely and observe and make sure that everyone's okay. I just want to flip the switch on the thermostat and make the house warm, and boom, everything's done. But camping made it so that I had nothing else to do. I didn't have an internet signal. I couldn't do any work. So I can just sit there and hang out with my boys and be the safety monitor and teach them to swing an axe, and they loved it. Camping created that opportunity. The next thing that I observe is that camping creates family cohesion, a lot of times through shared hardship. I believe that in many cases, people bond through shared struggle. If you look at the communities that when people are bound together in a community, one of the most reliable ways for that to happen is for them to experience some kind of hardship or struggle and be successful through it. I'm not talking about extreme suffering of some kind. I'm talking about shared effort. And this is true in the military, right? You bring a bunch of people into boot camp. They all come from totally diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences. They speak differently. They look different. They have different religious beliefs. You toss them into boot camp, and you create the drill instructors create a difficult but superable experience, something that is hard, and they suffer together, and they're in pain together. And on the other side, they come out as a band of brothers, a unit forged in the fire. Well, that's what I need as a family, right? That's what I need with my children. And families become emotionally close when they solve problems together, when they work together, when we overcome obstacles together. And camping provides you with a natural way to do that. It creates an opportunity for you to build teams and for those teams to work together. It creates an opportunity for group decisions, for cooperative labor, and the memories that are forged in this activity help to build the kind of sense of camaraderie that many families miss. When you compare this to other forms of travel or luxury travel or just kind of luxury enjoyment, it doesn't work that way, right? You get everyone's together in separate rooms, right? And what is there to do at a resort? Well, there may be a pool or there may be some kind of resort activity, but frequently, if you're just at a standard hotel, there's nothing for children to do except flip on a TV. And so you wind up with everybody has separate screens, separate entertainment, everyone's on their own schedule, and there's just not really any kind of shared common life because there's nothing to do. But throughout history, families have worked together, labored together, traveled together, built together, survived together, snuggled together to stay alive on a cold night. And you are not going to build a strong family with a clear sense of family identity just by going out and consuming together, shopping together. Rather, you build it by overcoming challenges together. And in many ways, the harder the experience, the more difficult it is, the better. Because then that shared suffering becomes part of the family lore. Give you an example, right? When I was growing up, one of the things that I really valued and appreciated was that the church that I grew up in had a tradition where we would all go camping together every year during the week between Christmas and New Year's. Most people are off or from Florida, and so that's the most pleasant time to be out in the woods. And so we would book some sites together at a nearby park, and we would all go to this. We would all go together for 3 or 4 days, and we would have some of our meals apart, but we would have some of our meals together. We would do some things separately, but we would do a lot of things together, and it was a really valuable part of my own personal growth experience when I was a boy. None of us had RVs. Everyone was in tents. A few people stayed off property at a hotel and came by. But it was just a really lovely experience. But it didn't start off as a lovely experience. The first year that somebody got the idea to do that thing, to establish that tradition, they went to a park that was nearby, a little bit closer than the one that we used to go to, and it rained the entire weekend. And everybody who went on that trip had an absolutely miserable time. It was just sodden and damp and horrible. They couldn't get fires to light. The fires that did light were smoky. Everyone was dirty and muddy and smoky, and it was a disgusting, miserable experience. And if I recall correctly, they ended it early. Nobody stayed for the whole time. Everybody just broke camp and went home soaked and miserable. But that lore of that horrible, miserable weekend became a fundamental part of the group lore for the rest of time. I went on camping trips for probably 15 years after that point in time. And I bet there was not a single trip, there was not a single time where those stories of that miserable experience did not come up. And everybody regaled one another with tales of their ultimate suffering and how terrible that first experience was. And it became such a fundamentally important part of who we were as a people. And it only came from disaster, right? From suffering and from misery. That's the beauty of suffering and misery. And when you get that kind of stuff into your head, it dramatically changes how you experience suffering and misery. Most of the time from then on, the weather was beautiful. But whenever it wasn't, I'm always the first to say, wow, man, guys, we're going to have some great stories. We are having a terrible time right now, right? This is miserable. Just think of all the great stories we're going to tell for years from now on, extolling our bravery in the midst of adversity, in the midst of this suffering. But it's true. And once that becomes part of you, you develop such a stronger psyche, right? Such a stronger person. You have the ability to face difficult things and endure them. And and then you don't get accused of being a snowflake, right? No one has ever accused me of being a snowflake, even while they were accusing my generation of being a snowflake. And I am determined that in the fullness of time, when I've finished my work as a father, no one will ever have cause to accuse my children of being snowflakes, because they will face so much adversity that they will have to develop the skills of overcoming that adversity. And when you build it together, it becomes part of it. And again, I don't know why it is, but we love to tell the terrible stories. And those terrible stories become just they become amazing. They just become part of your group, and you tell them year after year. It wasn't just the terrible story of that first one, but every year you accumulate some new catastrophe, and that allows your group to bond. Where you say, "Oh, you guys remember the time when such and such happens?" I tell. Still to this day, my favorite story. I think I'll give you one more. So we used to camp at a state park in Sebring, Florida, called Highlands Hammock State Park. And there is this loop that's a pretty cool loop that we used to love to go and ride our bikes around. And so we would ride our bikes, about a 3-mile loop, goes through the swamp, and you can go out and there's a boardwalk, and you can walk out in the swamp at night, and you can listen for the alligators, and you can shine your light around and you can see their eyes. It's a pretty cool experience. And it's just really fun to go out on this. Used to be, I haven't been there in years, but there used to be this really rickety part of the boardwalk. And you kind of felt like you were adventuring, right? You're over the swamp and it's dark and everyone has their lights off and you're hearing the alligators go at you. And again, you see the lights shining and you get the little shiver up your spine, but yet you're together. Really fun. So we would go out, and one of our traditions was we would go out and we would ride the loop at night in the dark. And what they do in the park, or at least they did, was they would close off the loop to cars. So they swing a little national parks or state park barrier across it, and they closed the loop to cars. But it wasn't illegal to go out, but we would go out at night, and we always rode it without lights. And in the swamp, it's dark, but you can tell where the road is because you just look up and it's a little bit lighter above you. And it was just a super fun experience. It puts all your senses alive. So we always looked forward to that night ride. So one year we went and did this, but we were all together. And there was a man in our group whose name was Larry. Larry was deaf. He was deaf and mute. And so he couldn't hear. That's what that means, right? Deaf. So we're out riding, and Larry would go on ahead. But this night, he goes on ahead of the group. And he was he was part of the group, but he was also perfectly fine on his own. So he went out riding ahead in the group. And so we're all coming around the curve, and we hear this tremendous crash. And the crash was because Larry had ridden ahead on his bicycle, and he had gone full speed into that little barrier cutting off the road because he forgot it was there. And he couldn't hear anybody. I presume we called to him or something. I don't remember, but he couldn't hear anybody. So there was no way for us to warn him. Thankfully, he was okay. He just had road rash. But just imagine, right? Your deaf friend drives full speed into a car barrier, wrecks his bicycle, goes head over heels over the handlebars because he can't hear you calling to him and he couldn't see it in the dark. And you have the stuff of lore. It gives you something hilarious to talk about with Larry once he's okay, of course, right? Anytime someone gets hurt, it's dreadfully funny once they're okay. So from then on, we never go on that bike ride without telling the story of the time that Larry went over the handlebars. And this becomes part of your group's culture, right? You learn a lesson and you say, hey guys, we need to remember that this barrier is going to be there. You have a catastrophic story associated with that. And that becomes part of the group lesson. And this is how groups cohere. This is how groups are formed. This is how you create a collective memory. This is how you share the lessons learned the hard way by your forebears, is you create opportunities to experience adversity, to experience difficulty, and then you remind each other, you recount, you retell again and again and again the stories, the people, and you do it again and again and again over time. This is how you build it. So if you want to build a family and you want to build a strong family culture, you're going to do it by overcoming challenges together. If you want to build a community and a strong community culture, you're going to do it a whole lot more effectively if you're out in difficult circumstances together of some kind. And by the way, you don't have to manufacture them necessarily. If you're out and doing things together, then just sitting around a dinner table at a local restaurant, right? Or going to a local resort. And the intensity is part of building those memories. My formula on memory is that I think that memory is built by novelty plus emotion. That when we have novelty and emotion, that builds memory. And one of my life goals is to build memory for me and for my children. And so I try to do that by novelty plus emotion. And strong emotion can be intense happiness, intense sadness, intense fear. And then novelty is just any way that is slightly out of the ordinary of an experience. So you can take any experience and you can create novelty if you will exercise creative thinking. And if you do that, you have 80% normalcy and 20% novelty, then there's a decent chance that you will remember more of your life and your children will remember more of their life. Next point would be that camping restores contact with reality. I think that one of the things I like about camping is that, frankly, camping reminds you that modern civilization is thin. It's fragile. Right? When you go out camping, all of a sudden, darkness becomes real again. You have to pay attention to the weather. Where are you going to get water from? How are you going to stay warm? You recognize that your shelter matters. And you rediscover your basic human dependence on these core experiences. Modern life creates a set of illusions that you just buy food from the food store, buy electricity from the electricity store, buy water from the water store. It all just comes in and it's all infinite, never ends, and it's guaranteed. And your only connection to those things is the money that you pay. But you get reconnected to the actual fundamental aspects of life in a way that's really true. And I think that this can be a fairly intense spiritual existence as well. When I go camping, I think about my connection to the ancients in a way that I don't in a normal life. I'm reconnected with the cycles of day and night, light and darkness. I look up at the stars and I ponder how intimately familiar the ancients were with the stars and how I will go months and months without ever looking up. I sit around a campfire and I think of how the ancients, for millennia, have had the same experiences. Camping reminds you that you are a human creature, not just a consumer. Camping is a great way to easily and naturally incorporate healthier activities, both physically and financially. You will close your rings when you go camping. Right? Camping naturally makes you walk, lift, get fresh air, fresh sunshine. You often will sleep better. I say that with a big asterisk, but at least your children will often sleep better. You move around. And if you're in places where where you can more easily get off the grid, right? I was staying in a National Forest Service campground. We had no hookups, no water, no electricity, no cell phone signal. And so it was just super easy and great to be off the phone, away from it all, kind of just calm and relaxed, a little bit of a dopamine detox. You can just do it. You can just get that stuff by just being out doing it. And then when you are camping, oftentimes a camping trip doesn't really fit well with a lot of other kinds of activities. So, if you go to, say, a theme park, that fits much better with a hotel than a camping trip does. It just kind of feels weird to go to a theme park and then come back to a campground. You might do it sometimes to save money. But what doesn't feel weird is to go for a hike, go for a bike ride, go for a swim, go for a raft. All of these things are just intensely physical activities that are fun in and of themselves. And most of these activities lend themselves straightforwardly to connection, right? Going on a hike Well, let's go do a 5-mile hike. There's going to be a lot of time to talk, to visit, to discuss. Preparing food for the hike. Everything that you do, all the preparation gives you time together. And I think that those health aspects are really amazing. Camping also lends itself to discovering the truth that you don't have to spend a lot of money to have a great time. And I'll tell this story in a podcast episode planned soon, but I've told it before. But if you have the right set of activities, you can just get rich by accident. I remember years ago, I had an experience where I visited with a prospective client when I was a financial advisor. And we were sitting down and kind of working up a balance sheet. And the dude had no idea that he was a millionaire. And it turned out he was a millionaire. He had underestimated his wealth by half. He thought he had a few $500,000 or something like that. He had just jumped over $1 million. And he was so surprised. He had no idea. But as I inquired further, basically his whole pathway to wealth was that he had a job that he went to. He put money in his 401k. He had a house that he lived in, but he had one hobby, and that hobby was mountain biking. And he loved to go mountain biking. And because he liked to go mountain biking, he had rigged up a camping setup where he just camped in his car so he could be first on the mountain, first on the trail. And his simple hobby it was not possible for him to spend very much money because of this simple hobby. And so he just wound up becoming a millionaire in his early 40s, basically by accident, because he had a simple hobby and he camped at the trailhead. It's amazing. Camping can be relatively low cost. It is relatively low cost. You can spend a lot of money on it. You can go out and buy yourself $1 million coach to camp in, quote unquote. But I'll describe in a moment kind of the gear and things like that. But you can do camping pretty inexpensively in reasonable comfort. I love that camping is basically training for prepping, right? Preparedness training disguised as recreation. So I teach prepping, and I want people to have physical preparedness. The idea being that most of the time, the normal systems of life, the financial system, the electric grid, the banking system, your water supply, your home, most of the time, those things work great. But sometimes it doesn't work great. Often this is a natural disaster, right? Forest fire coming through, hurricane knocks out the electricity. Sometimes this is some form of social unrest. There's riots in the streets, or there's a big financial collapse or depression of some kind. Sometimes just purely financial, right? You lose your house because you ran out of money, you made a bad bet, made a bad investment. And in those cases, having physical preps really makes a difference. And in reality, the best way to accumulate those preparedness items and to practice with those preparedness items is just to go camping. The vast majority of the things that you need for camping is the same exact things that you need if the power turns out of your house and doesn't come back for 4 weeks. If you go camping as a family, and here I'll start to add some specificity. Let's talk first about car camping. So there's a couple types of camping. I think of them as car camping, which means you load up your car with all your stuff and you drive to a place you can get your car to, where you unload your stuff and you set up your camp. And then there's backpacking, where you load up your backpack or your person with the stuff that you need, and then you go off walking into the woods and then you set up your camp there. Most of my comments apply to both, but I think for most people, car camping is going to be the more accessible of those things, and car camping is going to be an ideal entree to backpacking, to true, real camping, which would be backpacking. So if you're going to go car camping, what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need a tent. And that tent is something that you can set up at the campsite, but it's also something that you can set up in your living room. If the heating goes out and your family is really cold, you can set it up in the living room, and everybody sleeps in the living room tonight, and the shared body warmth will keep your family alive when you have no heat and it's really cold. It's also something that you can set up in your backyard, and when your house is sweltering and muggy because it's August 1st and a hurricane just came through in South Florida, well, you go out in the backyard and you sleep in your camp, and you get up in your tent and you get some whispers of wind come through, and you're a lot more comfortable than you are inside of that hot house. And so the tent as an alternative form of shelter is a really important preparedness item that does double duty. Things like sleeping bags, right? Obviously the same. What about something to cook with, right? A stove to use. Well, if you're going to go camping, you're going to have some form of stove. I generally like to have a propane stove. It works well. Grab a propane bottle and have a little stove to cook on. That makes life convenient. But that also provides you with the backup that you need to cook with if, for some reason, your electricity goes out and your electric stove is not functional, or if the gas line is ruptured and gets cut off and your gas stove is not workable after a natural disaster. And that stove, having that external stove, could very well save your life. Let me give you a few tips on gear while I'm doing this kind of prep training and showing you. So with regard to tents, I don't have any particular insight to offer with regard to tents. Backing up from the stoves for just a minute. I needed a tent. Costco had them for sale in the springtime. I just grabbed a big 10-man tent from Costco, and that worked fine for us. Tents, kind of consumer tents, are great. They will last you for a few years. I don't know how many nights you'll get out of them, but not much. There are some. There are lots of really lightweight tents and really durable tents for people who use tents for months at a time. I don't have any knowledge or experience with those kinds of tents. I myself admire a lot wall tents. I've never owned one, but I've always admired kind of the traditional canvas wall tent. And one of these days I'm going to have one. They are more time consuming to set up, but I think one of your kind of ideal preparedness items, if you're into camping for the prepping aspect of it, would be to have an old-fashioned wall tent. I think the people who use these the most are hunters when you're out doing fall hunting camp, where you can set up a tent and you'll leave it out for weeks or months at a time, and you'll kind of visit it many times. A canvas wall tent is a much longer lasting solution for portable shelter. It's just a hassle to set up and down every day or every couple of days. And so you'll have it for a longer period. But one of these days I'm going to own one. It's also one of your best options if you live in a place where it's cold. And if you live in a place where it's cold, you should seriously consider getting a tent that you can run a wood stove inside. And so wall tents, this is common. There are lots of other tents that you could turn into a hot tent, run a wood stove inside the tent, and then you really have something that's livable in the cold weather for an extended period of time. Sleeping bags, I mentioned, I don't have much insight on that. I think it's well worth paying for an expensive one and getting a good quality one. I don't have one myself. I just went to Goodwill and bought a $5 sleeping bag from Goodwill for every member of my family. That was cool. But I think that if you are going to take this stuff serious, by the way, if you are a serious camper, then having a proper sleeping bag and a proper sleep system that's going to insulate you from the ground, where you can do it well in the middle of winter, that could really be life-saving. So I suggest that. I just am not cool enough to actually have that stuff. With regard to cooking systems, I would suggest the simplest, straightforward option is a butane stove. I used to have the classic, simple, small scale Coleman stove, and I had a Camp Chef stove like that at one point as well. Those all work great, but they're just too small for me at this point. You have to use small cookware, and I don't use small anything anymore. So I grabbed myself a 2-burner Camp Chef Explorer stove, which is big and bulky. It's perfect for car camping, but you just get this big, beautiful burner stove and you hook it up to a propane tank, and that works great. And so I like to use this because, number one, it's useful for camping. Number two, it's great for emergency storage. Probably your simplest and easiest long-term emergency fuel storage is propane. So if you just get barbecue tanks of propane, it lasts forever in that context. And so you could have a dozen bottles of propane stored somewhere, and it's going to be good for decades. Nothing's going to change with it. Propane doesn't have any problems. It doesn't go bad. And so it'll work great for you 10 years from now. And so that's really useful from just a fuel storage perspective. You face bigger challenges when storing gasoline or diesel than you do with propane. Obviously, you have to figure out where to store that safely. I don't think your local fire inspector would be all that thrilled for you to have 10 propane bottles lined up inside of your garage. So think about that as you are considering it. But I like a propane stove. What I also like about a propane stove, by the way, is I use kind of mobile cooking gear, not only as for camping, but also just for entertaining. So I've always enjoyed having a good way to cook because it allows me to make great food, say at a local park, or if you want to host a lot of people, it allows you to have the ability to cook food well. Some people do that with a grill or a barbecue grill of some kind. That's cool. I love that. That's awesome. My favorite is just to have a stove with a removable portable griddle. So something like a Camp Chef, I used to have somebody stole it from me, but I used to have a 3-burner Camp Chef stove and then the Camp Chef 36-inch griddle that went on top. I used that for years. You can do great meats, you can do fried rice on it, you can do eggs, you can do pancakes, all the stuff. So I love the ability to just have a 24 or 36-inch griddle that's super portable, folds up, goes in a carrying bag, toss it in the back of your car or van or truck and take it to the local park and be able to feed 50 people with a cooler and a griddle. They're nothing better. And so that's basically my strategy, what I go for. I think there are good arguments to go in favor of from cookware for doing cast iron cookware. I think it's really fun. I enjoy a good Dutch oven. I didn't get one this time. I used to have 3 of them that I used to use and I gave them all away. But I'm going to get some more Dutch ovens, and Dutch ovens are fun because you can do genuine campfire cooking where you take the coals, put them under the oven, put them on top. I think that's really fun and a great way to add functionality and to build skills. Cooking over wood fires is a skill. What I got for this recent camping trip where I bought a bunch of new gear was I bought some pie irons. And so I got some cast iron pie irons, and those are really fun. Kind of a classic kid's memory to make a pudgy pie over the campfire. So I got a bunch of those, and those are a winner. I think those are a real winner because you can use them when you're camping, but you can also just use them in a backyard fire pit. And it just makes a Saturday afternoon, summer evening so much more fun when instead of mom or dad cooking all the food in the kitchen, you just grab the ingredients and say, all right, children, here's the pie irons. Let's fire up the bonfire and let's cook our dinner. Your children are going to love that. And so that was what I did. But I use cast iron skillets and whatnot as well. But I'm going to go ahead and get some Dutch ovens as well because I enjoy that experience and I enjoy the food, and I just think it's fun to be able to cook over a fire, as do my emergency preparedness solutions. Next thing is water systems. So with camping, the natural and obvious thing is just water containers, right? So trot down to Walmart. They sell a 7-gallon Aquatainer. I think those things are great. I've used those for years. I've always kept some form of water container in my car. Once you start doing it, you're not going to go back. And so, 5 or 7 gallons might be too much for you. But if you get used to carrying around a few gallons of water, especially with children, you always have water to refill your bottles. Of course, you will probably try to minimize that, given that it's a plastic container in the hot car in the sun. And you will naturally be concerned about microplastics in your children's testes. So obviously, you will minimize that. But having the water just amazing because it allows you to clean things, right? You go to the beach and you have water with you. You can wash your face. You can wash people off. It's just really nice to have water with you. And if you're doing this, by the way, there's the coolest systems are little pressurized systems where you take a little water tank, you pressurize them, and you now have an actual hose that you can use. That's really cool. And I've seen a lot in some places where you have a big beach culture. All the rage is to go ahead and put one of the water carriers on the roof rack. Then you have hot water when you get out of the beach and want to rinse off. But I've never bothered with any of that. Just grab yourself a 7-gallon container at Walmart, put water in it, grab a cup, and pour water with the cup. It works great. Make sure you strap it down well with good quality straps. Those things are a missile in an accident. So be careful there to make sure everything is properly secured. But that's the simplest way to handle water. And if you have 3 or 4 of those and you're going to have more and you refill them, once a year, you swap them out just with tap water, that can save the life of your family. And it's exact same gear you need for camping. So we went for 4 days. I think I had 4 of them, 28 gallons. It worked great. And so I used them for camping, but then now you have your basic, you fill them up and put them in your garage. And now you have some water stored in case the water goes out or in case you need to flush a toilet. And that drinking water, really can be so helpful. And the camping gear is the perfect gear to start with. You can also do filtration. And so you have the ability you can go ahead and buy a water filter that you use for camping. This is where you're usually going to get more into what you would need for actual backpacking. So the water filter that I like is the Grail water filter. I carry that a lot of times when I travel. It's perfect for the backcountry. And so you have some water filters for your backcountry backpacking, and yet that can save your life by allowing you to go to any source of water, filter water, that purify it for you and your family to drink. Then, of course, the water integrates with the cooking gear. If you have a big stove and you have a big pot, you have the ability to sterilize water, to pasteurize it, make it safe. And that is, even if the grid is out, that's wonderful, because then you could take tap water that you're not sure if it's been compromised or not. You don't know if there's a boil water notice, and you can use it. Same thing with things like lighting and batteries. And so getting a couple of lanterns for camping is a really great move. I bought both. I bought some lanterns, and I also bought some propane lanterns. I do the propane lanterns because I'm a sucker for a good, beautiful yellow light. And while they work hard to make LED lanterns yellower and with nice yellow colors, I just love that classic Coleman hissing gas mantle light. I love that. And so you can run those things off the little 1 pound propane bottles. I don't like the 1 pound propane bottles myself. I don't like to refill them, and I get annoyed with them. They're just always running out. And so what I just did is I got 2 Coleman lanterns and some long hoses and pop them onto a 20 pound propane tank. I don't know how long one of those Coleman lanterns would run off of a 20 pound propane tank, but if it were less than 2 or 3 months, I'd be surprised. Meaning that if I had to light my house exclusively with one of those lanterns, I would guess that I could get 2 months out of a 20 pound tank, which means if you've got 5 or 6 propane tanks, you've got months of light. And that'd be amazing from a prepping standpoint. And I love it from a camping standpoint. I love to sit by the fire, sit at the table, have that warm light, the little hiss of the Coleman lantern. That's, for me, super nostalgic. And it adds back to the memory, right? The novelty of hearing your light, and it builds those memories. So when I think about camping as a child, I think about a Coleman lantern on the table, all of us gathered around in the little bit of yellow light that's there, darkness all around, our family team together. That builds memories. And so if you can if you can stimulate the senses, don't always go for convenience necessarily, but if you can stimulate the senses, then that works. That's really a good way of building memories, right? The hot pudgy pie, the gooey pie filling on your fingers, the chocolate oozing out of your s'more, the crackling of the campfire, the laughter of the campfire songs, the hissing of the Coleman lantern, the dim yellow light. All of that stuff builds family memories. If you've been there, done that, you can picture and feel what I just described. And that is valuable. I think having proper backup lanterns is a great idea. And so built-in batteries are great. Having something that accepts a D-cell is great. D-cell batteries are amazing for long-term storage, just because they last for 10 years and keep huge amounts of their charge. And so from a battery from an emergency standpoint, having some electric lanterns with some D-cell batteries is a great idea, and just use them for camping. What I like to do now is I like to use a kind of like a modern tool battery structure. So I picked Ryobi tools. I'm not any kind of cool, like professional grade guy, but I picked Ryobi tools. And what you can do is you can standardize a lot of your emergency preparedness on a standard battery system. So you can do this with DeWalt or Milwaukee or whatever you want to use. I picked Ryobi. They're cheaper and they're good enough. And so you buy a bunch of Ryobi batteries that you use in your standard drill and impact driver. But then, of course, use those same batteries in your skill saw, in your Sawzall. I'm trying to think of the non-branded names. What do they call the thing? In your reciprocating saw. And what's the skill saw called? Anyway, doesn't matter. But then all of these companies have built around these battery systems an amazing set of other features. So you can buy little table lanterns that pop onto the top of one of your portable batteries Those work great. You can buy lanterns, hanging lanterns that use those batteries. You can buy big work site lights. So if you want a big camp light that will light up your whole campsite, we'll just grab one of the work site lights that runs off of a battery system. You can run a portable fan. So if you're camping where it's hot, you just use those Ryobi batteries and run a portable fan. You can run a radio. I took my little goofy leaf blower, and I take the leaf blower. Someday I'll make my children build fires, the straightforward way. But right now I need easy. So my easy button is a torch and a leaf blower. So you take a little propane torch that you just click the button, and that's the easiest way to light up a campfire. And then a leaf blower is the easiest way to get it really going. You just put a bunch of air on it, and you can dry out wet wood in no time. You get up in the morning, and instead of having to build the fire from scratch, you just pull off a few coals, drop some fresh sticks on top, or even logs works fine. Grab your leaf blower, fire it up on a low setting, blow off a little ash, and you can turn those coals into flames in a couple of minutes with basically no work. And so the battery system and having all the tools on a battery system works really great. And all of these companies also now produce tools that turn those batteries into inverters. So of course you can add USB outlets to them, pop on a little USB adapter, and you can use those little Ryobi batteries to power your cell phone, power your laptop, whatever you need to power. And then they all have little inverters. So you can have little inverters with 150 watts, 200 watts, if that works for you, to power a CPAP machine or something like that. Or you can put several of them together, and now they have big inverters where you can put all those batteries together as a way of powering larger appliances. So just depending on what you need. And of course you can all go up to an EcoFlow big portable battery. All that stuff is great. My point is that this stuff just, again, it's useful in daily life. And if you just think about camping in the back of your mind, recognize the intersection between tools that you can use at home, your drill, your driver, your saws, etc., repurposing those batteries into camping, and then repurposing them into emergency preparedness. So if the lights go out, you have a bunch of good quality lanterns that you can use to light up your house, and you're just going to be cycling through those batteries from time to time over the years just to keep your other tools going. So why not get double duty from them? Things like food storage. So with camping, often you will, of course, just grab a cooler and some ice. That's the cheapest way to do it. The same cooler and ice that you use for camping will be useful at your next party to serve as a drinks cooler. Everyone needs a good cooler. You might get some form of refrigerator that works for you. And traveling with a refrigerator in your car, or traveling with a refrigerator in a trailer. I have to use a trailer now to carry all the stuff. Is a great way to do that. So think about that. Tools, basic tools. For camping, you need a hatchet, you need an axe, you need a knife, you need some tools. And those are the same tools that you need for just your life. You should have that stuff. First aid supplies, first aid kits. And so the point is that basically everything you do for a week-long camping trip is basically what you need to cover a cessation of services at your home for a week. A little camping toilet, right? If you're out in the woods and you don't have access to a drop toilet or a bathroom, taking a camping toilet with you is a good thing. And so that camping toilet with a few extra supplies is what you would need if the toilet in your home stops working, so that you have a safe way to deal with family sanitation. A shower. You can, of course, put some water in a bucket. If you're into the shower thing, you can start with just dipping water out of a bucket to get everyone clean. That works great. Just knowing how to do that with children is really valuable. We used to give children baths just out of basically a dish pan, and that works fine. Heat up the water on the stove if you need some warm water. You can buy a little battery-powered pump. That's kind of the cool thing. So a lot of times people set up a little shower stall. You just put a little something to stand on, set up one of those little portable stalls, put a bucket of water and a little electric pump, battery-operated pump, and you can have yourself a shower out in the middle of nowhere. And if you want hot water, there's hot water heaters. The point is that camping gear, there's tons of it. And some of that gear, $50, $100, a couple $100 spent, can be a real lifesaver in a scenario where your water's out. Again, hurricane country or earthquake or whatever, having the ability to give your family a shower with your stored water is a really nice solution. And I think that's enough, but you get the point. On the whole, in addition to prepping, I think camping is a great way of building gratitude in yourself and in your children. For all my comments about adversity, I'm not a particularly tough guy, right? I'm a wimp like you. I like luxury. I enjoy a comfortable bed. And you come back from a camping trip and all of a sudden you appreciate having a shower, or you appreciate a hot shower. You appreciate beds. You appreciate toilets, you appreciate electricity, you appreciate how easy life is. And that's really valuable both for yourself and for your children. One of the fastest ways for you to become grateful for the civilization that you enjoy and ignore is just to temporarily live without it for a few days. And as you work at this, as you engage in this topic, and in this practice, you wind up building anti-fragility in yourself and in your children. You wind up building resilience. So final comments, how do you get started? What I would suggest to you, some people might start by camping in their backyard. I think that's cool. I think it's good for children to do that. It's super fun for them to do that and for you to do that with them. Again, just if you want to make a memory with your children this Friday night, set up a tent in your backyard, have dinner in the house, and go out and sleep in the tent with your children. And they're going to remember that and make it a tradition, right? Tie it to some holiday or some event and make it a family tradition. And sleeping in the tent with your children is going to be a way of marking it. I have a friend of mine, I'm trying to remember, I have a friend of mine who does this. I can't remember if they do it like the first day of spring or something like that something related to the year, that we always, on the first day of spring, we always go out and we sleep in the backyard. Again, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but setting up the tent and knowing that, you know what, every year on the first day of spring, I went out and I slept with my family in the backyard and we told stories. That becomes part of your family culture and of your family lore. So I think that backyard camping is cool. I don't think one night trips are always a great idea. It's a lot of hassle sometimes to kind of set up a camp and tear it down and whatnot for a night. But I think people do that. And if you have a streamlined option, that can be really great. Whenever I'm at a campground, I always respect and appreciate when I see just, a father with one son, or, I met two ladies that were in for one night, and just have a simple structure. You come in, you set up your tent, you hang out, you do the thing, and you go on. And so if you have some kind of streamlined structure like that, that's a great way of doing it. It's a great way of saving money. It's a great way of traveling on the cheap. If you have the ability to toss a tent into the back of your car and the tent is quick to set up and you have some kind of quick setup for making a meal and getting to bed, you can save a ton of money. And in the beginning of your life, this is mandatory, right? I think all college students should have a tent in their dorm room because the adventures you can have with just having a tent and a frying pan and a little single burner stove are amazing. And you'll have so much fun, and you can do it on the cheap, and you can save your money and let it compound. It's great. I think the ideal timing is often 2 or 3 nights, where 2 or 3 nights is enough, where you get a little payoff for setting up all the gear. If you do like me, where you set up tables and a stove and all that stuff, you get the payoff for not having to do that very much. But you go out to some beautiful place, and camping provides you with access to places that you can't otherwise go, right? You can often find some amazing lakefront campground that you can go and take your tent to, and you can stay there right next to the multi-million-dollar houses, and you can have the joy of that lakefront campground for $50 a night, $20 a night, $100 a night, whatever it is, just because you have a little bit of gear. Don't overcomplicate the gear. Try to be as simple as possible, but also don't skimp on the things that are important. So with my camping trip last week, I made sure that I got a a heater, for example, right? We have small children. My wife wakes up in the night to nurse the baby. I don't want her to be cold. Yes, you'd be fine if you snuggled down in a sleeping bag as an adult. You're going to be just fine. You're going to be warm. But if she's got to wake up and nurse the baby in the night, I don't want her to be cold. And so I bought a Mr. Heater Little Buddy, which is a cute little heater. It's designed for indoor use, works great in lots of contexts. Again, 20-pound propane tank and a hose. And so I just stick the heater inside, keep the big old propane tank outside, and run the hose in the tent. And now we've got a nice warm tent, so she's comfortable. There's no reason to suffer unnecessarily if I don't recall what that stuff costs, but if $150 can solve your problem for years of being cold at night, then do it. But don't overcomplicate the gear, right? Don't get too much of it. It's so easy to have too much gear that your enjoyment of the actual experience is diminished. But having the ability to bring stuff does make a difference. And so I rented a U-Haul trailer so we could load up bikes and multiple coolers. And you find just a few luxuries to make things nice, right? So load up the cooler with the fancy drinks that your family likes. Bring along the bicycles so the children have something to do. And if you have children who are of an age to ride the bicycles, then you have the ability just to show up at the campground, set up your gear, send the children off on the bike. And because there's things to explore, you don't need to see them for a couple hours. And that you will actually get a break. And in a campground, you're often that novelty, it reconnects children with their enjoyment of exploring. You just go to a hotel. What is there to explore, right? All there is people everywhere you can't go there. You can't touch that. And you're worried about what are they going to break? Go to a campground, toss them on a bike, tell them come back when it gets dark, and you're good to go. And they have to solve problems. They get lost. They have to find themselves. They have to figure out how to work together. And so, we had a great time at Yosemite, exploring the caves and crossing rivers and climbing on logs and all the stuff. And so even if your miles are diminished, by the way, with babies and things, grab yourself a backpack baby carrier or a jogging stroller or something that can go on hikes, and you can still do some trails even when you've got little children. But once your children get old enough to hike, embrace the hiking, embrace the long distance overnights, do that stuff. It really is going to pay off for them and help them to feel strong and powerful and resilient, right? Camping it's not pure fun. It is fun. It is fun, especially for children. I think there are some adults who really enjoy being way out in the backcountry, but car camping, I don't think is always super fun for parents. But it is fun to see your children embrace the world. I think most parents probably would rather go to a resort and sit on the beach, but you can do that when you're old. For now, embrace camping and embrace the adversity as part of your own personal training program. Camping is training that builds stronger families, stronger children, better marriages, learning to communicate, stronger minds, healthier bodies, and it builds a stronger culture. It sets you apart as people who are capable, who are resilient, who are not weaklings, who constantly need luxury. The goal is not to suffer, but the goal is to remain the kind of human being who can suffer with a good attitude, and that requires training. So that's my comments on camping. I hope you like it. I hope you'll try it. I wouldn't, I'm not going to make all my trips camping trips, but you better believe I'm going to have multiple camping trips per year because of all these benefits. It is such a healthy activity. It's such a wonderful activity. And we live, by the way, in the United States of America. It is unbelievable how much incredible diversity we have in our country, the vistas, just everything. It's astonishing. You start making lists of local parks, state parks, national parks. What an incredible country we live in. We have so much government land that is accessible to you. Go out and use it. Be the kind of person who goes out and lives. And you're going to enjoy your next 5-star resort much more if this next trip is a bit more primitive. And then on the other side, you're going to really enjoy that 5-star resort for the next time. around, and your children will as well, because it's not just as boring, because that's not the only place you go. Get out there, give it a try. Thank you for listening. Be back with you soon.